Tired eyes, rough hands, weary hearts, minds broken down by the pains of the past, and only remnants of the full mind remain.
Tears dripping down one's eyes from broken relationships. I seen it. I experienced it. The reality of life that hit me the moment my mom told me that she and my dad won't be together. The picture that I had of my mind and my family broke. At least partially. Still, I hold on to the possibility of a reconciliation. A time we could all come back together. You see, I didn't understand the flaws of my father. Still, I find it hard to understand the flaws of my mother. But I've grown since that time. I began to see the imperfections. More time, I would say humanity within my parents. Life has begun to reveal that they are not perfect. Life has begun to reveal that they are more like me than I was able to perceive.
The first superheroes I met were my parents. They were my real life The Incredibles. They always had the answer to my problems, a helping hand when I didn't know how to use my own. They were my shields from a world that threw stones. They surrounded me in those moments where I felt alone. My parents were my home, but a home built on sand never stands. And when the storm comes, it will collapse the home when it hits the land. So you watch your childhood memories crumble right before your eyes. The storm robs everything you built in that home, everything you are, everything you've become. It's now passing in between your feet as the water begins to erase everything you once made. All because of one phrase, I want to divorce.
Hearing those words my mother spoke to me stick with me constantly. I remember that moment. Me and my older brother sat down in the living room. It was early in the morning. The day before, me and my siblings spent the day with my father. He had only a brief interaction with my mom, but I didn't think nothing of it. Me, naive, not understanding the words that my mother was about to tell me. My brother understood it though. He had already known the reality. You see, my childlike mind couldn't believe the words that she was saying to me. You know, she said to me, "Your father don't want to be with me no more." I couldn't understand. I saw a tear in her eye, and almost if I was a mirror, one fell out of mine. I couldn't fathom the pain that she felt. But in that moment, I started to think of my father's flaws. My father, he was a king to me. Nobody could tell me that he wasn't who I perceived him to be, the greatest man I knew. I would always tell myself I want to be like him when I grow. Rich in mind, rich in soul. We was not rich in the physical form, but around him I felt like I was. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt the pain of the destruction, of the depiction of someone that you had in your mind?
I knew my parents had problems, but so does every couple. I always assumed they'd work out. They taught me about resilience. They taught me how to stand on business. They taught me to never give up. But it seemed like they gave up at the first hurdle. My mind was constantly spinning around in circles. I thought back to the time when my mum's arms changed to the color of purple. I thought about all the pain they were holding their eternal beings. What about their love, their feelings? Did they ever see any of this at the beginning? So many questions that I never got the answer to. But all I knew is that love had become the battlefield in their mind, and their marriage was the war. Each day I'd hold my mum as she cried, and those days she wished she took her own life. I'd sit with my dad and listen to him run and scream about the same things, the pain in his heart. Whilst we smoke up and get high, my superheroes were no longer wearing their armor. They laid naked and cold, vulnerable and flawed. My parents were human beings that needed to be attended to, too.
Time went on. I became the man of the house as my brother moved out. Having to become a father figure to my siblings before I was able to deal with the pain that my father's absence brought me. I began to know my mum. The revelation of the years of pain that she felt inside that has altered the way in which she sees life. I had to change my perception. I had to see my mother as a woman rather than a figure that I've made up in my mind. See, I began to learn her thoughts. In doing so, I began to see her flaws. Why she would lash out at my siblings. Why would she become frustrated at every little thing? I never realized the pain that she was bearing. Her silent moments felt like screams for help the more I understood. I thought about the thoughts that she never said, the words that she left unspoken, the silence in her shouting. I have a few images of my mom's eyes that I have ingrained in my mind. I try to hold on to them so that I can remind myself that she is human, so that I don't try to put more on her than she can hold. Honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm a burden. I feel like I am the cause for my mother's pains. I try to let those thoughts drift away so they don't take me away from my purpose. Sometimes it's hard for me to accept my mother's flaws. But perceptions change, they say. So I open my mind to change.
I wondered if my self-hate transcended into the resentment I held for them. Maybe my young brain couldn't comprehend that my parents had human hearts. No, they weren't made of metal, steel, or iron. The reality being my dad was a broken man. My mother with her unspoken demons deep down, I knew her heart was crying for healing. So maybe I had nowhere to place this hate, this resentment. I fed it back to myself instead, like a toddler who's just learned how to eat by themselves. I sat unfazed in a chair of my own mess. I digested what needed to be thrown out. The late nights I'd lay thinking long and hard, trying to identify the timeline of destruction. When did we take our eyes from the Lord's instructions? When did love become an option and not a sacrifice? Who called the shots and said it's time to give up? Who stopped filling their own cup first? Lord, why did they give up on love? If it was as though they gave up on you. Now in times of spiritual devotion, sometimes I find it hard to even trust you. You show me a love that never gives up, but this formula is foreign to me. Really, I find it hard to believe wholeheartedly, sincerely. I want to believe your kind gestures and your constant longing for me. But the collapsing of love in our home has made it hard for me to believe that anyone could truly ever love me.
I think about the effect that my parents had on me. For years, I convinced myself I was okay. I convinced myself to ignore the pain. I began to be unable to convey my thoughts. I was shut off. Lost. Never knew the purpose for this life that God had for me. At my lowest, I cried out to him. You see, I shouted and screamed. I felt like he never responded. I felt as if he rejected me the same way my earthly father did. I ran away from the destruction in my mind. Why am I still living this life? I asked myself this question constantly. I began to say to myself that I'm living to die, creating some form of twisted deity of death in my mind. Was I ever seen in those moments? I still question this every now and again. I ask God for strength to let go of the version of me that I created. I can't live in the same space as him. My parents taught me to love God, hold on to his words, they would say, but it became hard for me to have hope in a man that I couldn't see. When the one that I could wasn't following the same words that he was telling me, finally, I let go of the pain that I used to hold on to. I let the old me die so I can walk in who God called me to be. You see, I prayed for peace. I prayed that my father can find the healing, the one that was imparted on him from his father's misdeeds. I used to think that maybe it was some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. I now see the hold that rejection had over my family. Time goes by. God breaks bondages away. I let my mother go. I released her from this unattainable standard that I held her to. It was wrong of me. She shouldn't have to fulfill both roles. She had her own traumas to bear. Now, I restructured the thoughts inside. I look to God, and I pray for him to repair the pain hidden in the earth.
I've learned that we understand things through experience. So I guess everything happens for a reason. And even in the midst of confusion, I search for the hidden gem of meaning. So even though what my parents had isn't tangible anymore, I now know which doors to knock on in search for love galore. I now know it's okay to use my scissors to cut off unhealthy cause. Lord, guide us on the path of love and lead us towards freedom, despite all the things we saw.